How you guys doing? Today I'm going to do the roles of participants in the court process. Gonna go over the court process and how each of the roles play a vital role in the justice of either a criminal court case or a civil court matter. And I'm gonna start off with the plaintiff. This is usually the person that's filing the lawsuit. They usually feel like they've been wronged in some kind of way, whether it's physically injured, they've been like a breach of contract, or some kind of property damage to either their, say, like cars or houses. They just feel they've been wronged in that kind of way. Most of the time they're usually asking for some kind of compensation for either the injuries or those property damages, and usually it's with large amounts of money. These usually are in civil court matters, not necessarily criminal court matters. Then we have the respondent, also known as defendant, not defense. These are usually the individuals that are being sued, whether it's the companies or it's just a individual to individual type of thing, like a civil lawsuit. They respond to the allegations of the plaintiff, and they usually have lawyers or a legal team that can help them build up a defense against what the plaintiff is suing them for. And usually they try and not have to pay any money at the end of the day. Then we have the accused. These are the people, usually it's crimes being committed. These are the ones that committed the crime. This is in criminal court cases now. These are usually charges that are being brought on by the states, and these individuals are often innocent until they are proven guilty, and they are to have legal protections such as the right to remain silent and the right to an attorney. They still get those even if they did commit the crime, because at the end of the day they're innocent unless they've been fully proved with evidence in court. And then we have the prosecutor. These represent the government or state. When it comes to these criminal cases, they're the ones that are trying to convict this individual of the crime that they are being accused of. They present evidence that is trying to build up the case to, of course, convict the criminal. However, they do have to follow strict laws, standards, and they have to ensure that justice is pursued fairly and not just for a conviction. Because if you're pursuing a unjust sentence and the guy didn't even actually commit the crime, and you're just going for a conviction, that's, at the end of the day, that doesn't look very good. Next, we got the defense attorney. They represent the accused, the people that are accused of whatever charge it is. Their job is to defend their clients and help to kind of tear down that evidence that they have against them, to try and break down the case to prove that their client was not actually the one that committed the crime. Oftentimes they get the charges reduced, or they'll get them dismissed, or sometimes they argue for an acquittal. Now these individuals do play a key role in upholding due process. And then of course we have the judge. They're more of a neutral authority. They don't really lean to one side or another. They're kind of in the middle grounds. Their job is just to make sure that the court is following the law. They rule on objections when it comes to both sides, if they're objecting to some kind of statement. And they often give instructions to the jury. And then when it comes to verdicts on criminal cases where there is no jury involved, it is the judge that does have to ultimately come up with the decision. Now the judge has to make sure the trial is fair, though. Like they can't swing towards one side. Both sides has to be equally involved and equally opportunity to speak and provide evidence. And then we also have the victims. And these are usually people that are harmed due to the crime of whatever the accuser is accused of. They're not necessarily a direct party. They're often represented by the states or the local government. And it's often thanks to their testimonies and their participation in the trial that allows the accused to be convicted of the crime. Now we also do have the witnesses. These are another individuals that can actually help convict the crime, that convict the accused of the crime that it is being accused of. They often have knowledge of the crime by being first-hand knowledge because they witnessed it happen, or they know something about the person that has been accused of the crime. Like they might know the guy, they might be friends with him, or so on. Or it could be somebody that is like a specialist in some kind of field, so they were brought on as a witness to give a testimony based off of their knowledge of the crime and like how it could have been committed. They're usually called by either side, and they have to be as truthful as possible, and they are under oath. And then we have the police. So these are the individuals that they're first responders. They're the first one on. They usually are the ones that arrest the individual before he gets to the court. Their jobs is mostly investigating the crime. They have to gather as much evidence as possible on the crime, and they just make the arrest, of course. Now, oftentimes they are brought into the court to testify, and they have to give like a testimony on the evidence that they collected, how they collected it, how they composed their investigation, and then how it was handled. It's very crucial that their evidence and their investigation was done in a lawful way, because oftentimes if it was not lawful, it's thrown out the window, so it won't even apply. And then of course we got the final, and that's the members of the jury. It's pretty much just individuals from the community. They're brought on to listen to both sides give the argument and allow both sides to just talk back and forth, do their little argument. They have to remain impartial. They can't have no bias to either side. They're only allowed to use the evidence that is presented into the court, and at the end of the day, they're the ones that make the conviction on these criminal court cases. As you can see, there's a lot of parts inside of this court system that we have in the United States. And as long as each individual part is working together, we do have a pretty good system nowadays. That's all I got.